It is happening. SpaceX has announced Starship Flight 6 for November 18th. Today we'll dedicate an entire episode to what you can expect from this flight. What will be different? Will SpaceX push the boundaries of what's possible further? And most importantly, will they prepare for orbit with this flight? My name is Felix, welcome to What About It. Let's dive right in. Starship updates. This week has been densely packed, and with Starship's 6th orbital flight test confirmed only to be a week away, we know why. To build excitement for this next flight, SpaceX released a recap for the previous one that includes some amazing, never-before-seen footage. Because of just how incredible this flight was, we have already seen quite a bit of footage. However, there are a few things in here that we haven't seen yet, and because SpaceX decided to upload it to YouTube, it's now all in 4K. The first incredible scene is this beautiful view of the ship's hot staging. This looks like something straight out of a sci-fi movie, with the blue glow of the engines shining right at the camera and propelling the ship away as the booster flips around. For the first time, you can also see the Raptor movement just after hot staging. Can you see them gimbal into their neutral position? This is because during hot staging, those center engines are pointed outward so that less force and heat is applied straight down onto the hot staging ring. Once that is done, the center engines gimbal back into the middle. This is a very interesting insight into how hot staging works on starships. And that wasn't the only amazing view. Arguably, one even more impressive is an onboard shot of the ship, only this time it's just after splashdown. The submersible Starship. Here you can see just how successful this splashdown really was, with water rushing over the flap right in front of the camera just after the ship hits the water. The shot just shortly after shows the camera fully submerged. This shot was likely taken at least 5 to 10 meters underwater. All of this is only the start, as Flight 6 is now only days away, so you know what that means. SpaceX just released their new timeline for the next Starship flight. Let's check out what we have to look forward to, what are the changes, what's the goal? Seeing how the license for this flight was already granted by the FAA due to its similar flight path to the last one, you'd think this would be a repeat of Flight 5, and while it is in some aspects, others are completely different. Firstly, we now have a time. The Starship is set to fly at 4 p.m. Central Starbase time on Monday the 18th. An afternoon launch. Maybe even more importantly, there's daylight available for another very important part of the launch, more on that later. Starting on the ground, we can see that SpaceX has once again decided to change its fueling procedures for the ship and booster. Interestingly, the time it takes for SpaceX to load the booster and the ship has once again increased. But why? For the first 3 flights, the time it took to load the booster and the ship was decreased. This has multiple purposes, the primary among them being reduced boil-off. Cause the longer it takes to load the vehicle, the longer propellants are left without being used. Because these propellants need to stay at cryogenic temperatures, there is inevitably boil-off, caused by the propellants heating up and needing to be vented to prevent an overpressure event. This can be extremely wasteful. While SpaceX has ways to reduce the amount of boil-off during propellant loading, it can still be expensive, so every second is money wasted. Ooh. In the grand scheme of the Starship program, this amount is negligible. But as SpaceX wants to launch Starships as often as airliners fly, it can become significant. These increases in fueling time are hopefully just temporary, as SpaceX expands the fuel farm to connect with Pad B. We should begin to see these numbers go back down for later flights. Both the ship and booster now begin propellant loading around a minute earlier, with the only exception being the ship's fuel, which still starts at T-minus 49 minutes and 50 seconds. The completion time for propellant load remains the same. All loading is completed at T-minus 2 minutes and 50 seconds. After that, at T-minus 30 seconds comes the final go for flight from ground control. Yes! 20 seconds later, the flame deflector activates with water jetting out in all directions. Shortly after, the engines start, then at T-0, Starship is yet again off on a history-making flight. But before I tell you about that, we've looked into our channel metrics and there are over 2 million returning monthly viewers who have not subscribed yet. We just hit 500,000 subscribers. 500,000 of you help us improve the channel even further by double checking that you've hit that subscribe button so you don't miss our updates. While you're at it, give us a like and become a wise supporter. Why? Because you'll gain access to a massive amount of extra content. With it, you get access to daily new Starbase photo galleries, including all those we've posted so far. Satellite, aerial and ground photos, more than 400 posts in the past 2 years alone, with up to 7 picture galleries per week, insights, chats with me, you name it. Thank you so much, you rock! Now back to Flight 6, paving the way to the stars. When it lifts off, this flight will mark quite a few milestones, including the fastest turnaround time between launches, just 1 month and 5 days. Interestingly, this means that when Starship launches for the 6th time, it will officially have the fastest super heavy lift rocket turnaround time ever. You might think that Starship would have already had this, given its quick turnaround time of just 3 months between flights 3 and 4. However, the Saturn V actually had a turnaround time of just about 2 months on a few Apollo missions. Apollo 9 to 10 was 2 months and 15 days, and Apollo 10 to 11 was 1 month and 28 days. So this will actually be the first time Starship is launching with a faster turnaround time. This shows the progress that SpaceX has been making, but it is also a good reminder of just how quickly NASA was able to move back in the 1960s. Keeping the comparisons, another interesting note is that the Saturn V's 6th flight was actually Apollo 11, the first mission to land people on the moon. This also goes to show the difference between the two programs and just how much time SpaceX is putting into testing Starship to make sure it's perfect for carrying its first payload. Alright, let's get back to launch now, because the real excitement happens after liftoff. The initial liftoff stays the same, with the booster following what should be an almost identical course to the previous flight, with the first difference coming at MECO, or most engines cut off. All but the 3 center engines are cut off at 2 minutes and 32 seconds. That's a second sooner compared to Flight 5. Considering how small this change is time-wise, it may be a result of reduced ship weight. Getting slim. After all, SpaceX did remove quite a few tiles from the ship, and this 1 second sooner cutoff could be to compensate for that. This could also be due to an increased amount of thrust from the booster, as SpaceX is known to perform iterative design on the engines. We can also see that hot staging takes place just a second sooner for this flight as well. This is about 7 seconds after MECO and is likely a small upgrade following lessons learned from the last flight. After that, the booster immediately flips around, and then at T plus 2 minutes and 44 seconds, the middle ring of 10 engines reignites to send the booster back to the pad. Woohoo! Here we go! Oh. It appears SpaceX decided to speed up the flip maneuver again for this, as the boost back burn begins just 5 seconds after the hot staging. This is closer to what SpaceX had before Flight 5, which took 7 seconds. Before we continue with the flight timeline, let's talk about an artwork I recently received. Today's episode is brought to you by the Mars Gallery, where 3D artists with over 20 years of CG experience and a passion for space exploration came together to create stunning limited edition prints. I'm here to share a look at one of these incredible artworks as I unbox and reveal the fine details up close. This is one of 3 pieces in their initial series titled Occupy Mars. It is really cool. And each piece is available in the print-only option or with a black or white frame. Utilizing top-tier production methods favored by artists and professional photographers, the Mars Gallery ensures each piece is crafted with the highest quality. Every piece comes with a certificate of authentication, and there is even an option to add an NFT, making it a truly unique addition to your collection. And it doesn't stop there. The entire production process is carbon-free, reflecting the Mars Gallery's commitment to sustainability. Whether with a visually striking image, a selfie capturing a long-awaited reunion, or an inspiring human exploration scene, these AI-enhanced pieces bring the beauty of space right into your home. Finally, let's see how this piece fits into a living space. See for yourself why and get one of the Mars Gallery's limited editions with my discount code Y15 for 15% off each piece. Also remember to sign up at www.themarsgallery.com for exclusive discounts and to be the first to know about their future releases. The Mars Gallery, space in every pixel. Stand out from the rest, Y15 at checkout. Alright, back to Starship Flight 6 and the booster journey. The booster then burns for 54 seconds, which is 1 second shorter than Flight 5, before cutting its engines and jettisoning its hot staging ring to splash down in the Gulf of Mexico. It'll be fished out later to prevent any environmental issues. Hopefully it didn't hit any whales or sharks. Interestingly, it does appear the booster is taking a slightly different re-entry trajectory during its return, as the booster now reaches transonic speeds much later than on Flight 5. The reasoning for this may be pretty interesting. During Flight 5, Booster 12 had a slight problem with its outer engines, which were damaged due to high temperatures during re-entry. It's possible that SpaceX found a way to fix this by changing the booster's re-entry trajectory, allowing it to shed heat more effectively to avoid excessive heating to those outer engines. Perhaps this is how it's being easily addressed. This would also likely change when SpaceX needs to start its landing burn. In this case, it is now started at T plus 6 minutes and 38 seconds, exactly 3 minutes after the boost back burn ends. Interestingly, that means the booster now spends 8 seconds longer gliding back in, which means it has 8 extra seconds to spread out its heat and reduce its speed. As the booster descends, both mission control and the booster itself will have a decision to make. Will it attempt a catch or will it splash down in the ocean? If at any point the onboard computer or mission control feels the booster is not in good enough condition to attempt a catch, there are many abort scenarios, including crashing into the ocean or even crashing right next to the tower. SpaceX even had a problem during the last flight. A small issue almost triggered an abort scenario during landing that would have caused the booster to crash into the ground next to the pad. During a debrief with Elon Musk, we found out that this is actually the main factor determining the launch date, as teams wanted to make sure all the commit criteria were perfect. If the booster once again receives a go, we get to watch SpaceX once again attempt what was believed to be impossible by many just a month ago. The booster slowly lowers itself down and translates over the launch mount and into the arms of the tower, completing the 7-minute journey. Hopefully, that journey ends yet again with a booster hanging from a tower on a pair of chopsticks. If SpaceX achieves this again after only a month, they'll prove that this isn't just some tech demo anymore and that this prototype is already more advanced than all other rockets on the market. Even if SpaceX decided to give up on reusability for the second stage, Starship would likely already dominate the launch market. The numbers are there. Of course, this is not the end goal for Starship, but rather just one of the goals, likely the easiest to achieve. Because the next goal SpaceX needs to achieve is recovering the ship, which is why SpaceX has put so much work into Ship 31, which is still on its way to orbit throughout this entire booster recovery process. Arguably, the ship's flight is even more important than the boosters this time. SpaceX has already proven that recovering a booster with a tower is possible. However, SpaceX has now confirmed that the ship will be testing quite a few things that have never been attempted by a ship before. After Ship 31 reaches its near-orbit trajectory at 8 minutes and 27 seconds into flight, its engines are cut and it begins its coast phase. That's the perfect time for a toilet break during the stream. However, unlike Flight 4 and 5, which had highly uneventful coast phases as SpaceX focused on the ship's re-entry, now that they've proven that they can successfully splash down twice, even with some damage, they want to test other things too. So, no toilet break. Notably, SpaceX has brought back a test we have yet to see on the timeline since Flight 3. At 37 minutes and 46 seconds into flight, SpaceX will attempt a Raptor in-space relight demonstration. Yes! This is where SpaceX relights one or even multiple Raptor engines while in orbit in zero gravity to demonstrate its capability. Lighting an engine in space is quite a bit harder than lighting one on the ground, as the lack of gravity allows the propellants to float around freely in the fuel tanks, meaning that unless you have a system to force the fuel to where it needs to go, you're just going to be sucking in air bubbles. That's why this demonstration is so important, and it's also why SpaceX has not attempted to put Starship into a full orbit yet. If SpaceX put Starship into a full orbit and then realized they couldn't relight the engine to bring it out of its orbit again, it could be a huge risk, not only to other vehicles in orbit but also to things on the ground. Low Earth orbits decay over time and are fairly hard to predict. In other words, SpaceX does not want to drop a 1,000-ton stainless steel Starship on some random town in Australia or anywhere else. Hey Australia, you're totally safe. This isn't the only new thing SpaceX is testing, as during re-entry they have quite a few things for this ship's heat shield. Along with the timeline, SpaceX also provided quite a bit of information about these tests. The first of these is a new secondary thermal protective system. This system may replace the backup ablative thermal protective system which we saw SpaceX install on Ship 30. This backup is designed as a last resort if a part of the main heat shield becomes damaged. Unfortunately, the tiles used on starships are quite brittle and prone to cracks or even falling off entirely. So this backup heat shield is crucial to ensure that starships can be safely and reliably recovered after each flight. The second test SpaceX is running is removing tiles. What? We have covered this quite a bit in the past few episodes as SpaceX removed several rows of tiles along the edge of the heat shield. We theorized that this could be done to reduce weight, as these sections were not needed, and to remove tiles from sections that may come in contact with the chopsticks during a catch attempt. And sure enough, SpaceX confirmed our suspicions, stating that this was a test for catch-enabling hardware on future vehicles. The third change to look forward to during the ship's re-entry is a higher angle of attack. This will stress the ship's aerodynamic control to gain as much data as possible for future landings. The final thing to look forward to during this re-entry is my favorite, and it will likely be yours as well. SpaceX's launch window for this flight is late afternoon, compared to the morning launches we have grown used to for the Starship program. This is important as this afternoon launch from Texas means we will also be getting a daylight landing in the Indian Ocean for re-entry and splashdown. And that sounds delicious. According to SpaceX, this will provide better conditions for visual observation. In other words, it will look incredible. On previous flights, due to the nighttime re-entries, we were able to see the glow of the plasma on re-entry quite well. However, during the final stages of descent and the water landing, it was impossible to get a good view, especially after the engine cut off. All dark. Looking at where this falls on the timeline, things have been shifted around a bit, with the ship's re-entry beginning at 47 minutes and 13 seconds. The ship then plummets through the atmosphere before becoming transonic 1 hour, 2 minutes and 6 seconds into flight. This is just 22 seconds later than on previous flights and is likely caused by the previously mentioned higher angle of attack SpaceX has put the ship on. At this point, the ship is quickly slowing down, reaching subsonic speeds just over a minute later. Then around 1 hour and 5 minutes into the flight, the landing maneuver begins with the aft flaps folding and the forward flaps extending to swing the ship around. It lights its engine and begins the flip maneuver. After that, we should hopefully see the third successful splashdown of a Starship, and hopefully this time with a few incredible daytime views. With the date now set, it's no surprise that SpaceX finally rolled the hot staging ring for Booster 13 into the Mega Bay for stacking. Ship 31 has also been receiving its final touches, as it appears SpaceX decided to give this ship a decal as well. This time the decal for the ship is a banana for scale, which goes off on an old joke in aerospace engineering of using a banana to show the size of a vehicle or component. Seeing that SpaceX had the time to add this decal, the heat shield for Ship 31 is likely complete. This was later confirmed, as the ship, like the booster, received a pair of road closures. It's currently scheduled to roll out on the 13th. From here, the vehicle will undergo a full wet dress rehearsal and then be ready for launch. I'm gonna make a prediction here in advance. Don't be surprised if the full wet dress is a partial fill. SpaceX does this all the time now, and it doesn't mean that anything went wrong or that they need to perform a full fueling cycle. This flight is truly going to be spectacular. It's taking what SpaceX learned from Flight 5, what they could accomplish, and expanding on it to push the limits with these prototypes before Block 2 flies on the next flight. Along with the timeline, SpaceX announced that a Block 2 ship, likely Ship 33, will be flying on Flight 7. Payload? Unfortunately, this means that Ship 32, essentially already completed, will likely be scrapped. But if that means we get to watch a new Block 2 ship fly sooner, I'd say that's a fair price to pay. And that wasn't the only Ship 33 news, as we also saw this. Yep, those are Raptor engines for Ship 33. These are Raptor 2.5s rather than Raptor 3s. These Raptors are a bit older than you might think. We know this because we've seen one of them before, specifically this Raptor vacuum engine. We saw it in October of last year when it was being towed by a Cybertruck for a Tesla commercial. It currently has a kill count of 1 drone. Starship truly is a game changer for spaceflight. It is set to revolutionize space and how humanity views space and our future among the stars. Lastly, I'd like to offer 2 essential pieces of trip planning advice for Flight 6. If you're lucky enough to see it in person, you should consider one very important component: your viewing location. On the ground, that can only be Raptor Roost, Wise home turf at Starbase, and the place where we set up our cameras. Right on the edge of the exclusion zone. Book your spot now. Go to raptor-roost.com for more info, and if you really want to go the next level, watch it from above. Book one of 5 available seats and watch Flight 6 from a Redline helicopter. $999 per seat. It's not cheap, I know, but these are the only seats in the world that give you this view. Call 806-683-6777 for more info. You'll be flying with one of our photographers, and what you see now is the view you'll get. That's raptor-roost.com for the best view from the ground, and 806-683-6777 for the world's best view of SpaceX's Flight 6 from the air. To be clear, these are shoutouts for close partners and friends. Y does not earn a cent from this. These are just my personal trip recommendations. Go SpaceX, go Flight 6. That's it for today. Remember to smash that like button, subscribe for more. This is what fuels the algorithm. This is how you can help us for free. Check out our epic shirts in your favorite Space Nerd store. A new Raptor design and our epic Flight 5 design are both up. The perfect Christmas gift. Link is in the description and in the card you should see now. And if you want to train your space IQ even further, watch this video next to continue your journey. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you again in the next episode. Ship's re-entry beginning at spitting all over the place. You gotta take that. That's the final recording. In aerospace, which is transcending.